So you've got themes. Now you need to create some thumbnail sketches. Okay, there is a handout that's on the class website for this project, and it talks about the different stages of graphic design and how we go through this ideation stage or conceptual stage, thinking about design options, and we'll be creating some thumbnail sketches, quick gesture sketches. So you should create those too, preferably with paper and pencil. Some people will do that roughing stage on computer if they're really free and adept at using it. But for you, I would encourage you to just do it by paper and pencil. You have to hand it in as part of the project. So create the sketch, and then it's a matter of trying to use these different tools that we've tried in Illustrator to create these different symbols. The symbols are supposed to look colorful and three-dimensional. So keep that in mind when you're creating those sketches. I'm going to open up one of the landscape templates from the other day. So here's my landscape template, and of course it opens up as a new document. I could save it right now, which is probably not a bad idea. And I'm going to call it, this will be the sample symbol. So colorful and three-dimensional. We don't want it to look like it's just lying flat. That depends on the object. Some objects, the one I was going to demonstrate for you here is a feather. Okay? A feather is a little hard to draw in full-on 3 dimensions, kind of a flat object anyway. But I mean, do your best to try and add shape and contour, shadow if needed, to get a 3-dimensional look. So because we're using a vector graphic program, we want to try and keep in mind that we're trying to draw our shapes using individual objects. What's up here?
Is it on the black thing?
They're black bags, just like the one I gave you guys. Yeah, camera bags, tall covered middle shelf. You want to try and draw your symbols using individual little objects put together, as opposed to draw a complete outline. I realize when you create your quick thumbnail sketch, you probably just take the pencil and you create an outline of an object. But here we want to try and create objects out of component pieces. So let me give you the example here of the feather. A lot of people might just come in here, pick up the pencil tool, and come in and draw something. This looks more like a leaf. And they might try and draw something like that, and then they'll draw the other, line sort of up the middle, and it'll have all these other little pieces coming off of it. Oops. And part of the problem with this ends up being, you can imagine if I added all the other lines on there, part of the problem with this ends up being that what's going to happen when we try and fill this object in with color? I mentioned to you yesterday, you want to turn that off. Yeah. Mentioned to you, not yesterday, the day before, that in order to fill objects in, there should be a complete closed path. We shouldn't be trying to fill in the open objects like the open jar. So this object right now really isn't a complete closed path. It's made up of all these little open paths and extra lines. Plus the fact that we're not going to be able to give this much contrast or much texture or interest. We're going to be able to at best fill in with a gradient fill, but it's not going to look very textured like a feather. Right? So the better way to draw something, incidentally, if I want to just move this out of the way, I'm going to pick it up. Just select all of those pixels, click and drag, or objects rather. And then I can just drag it out of the way. The better way to draw an object like this is try and break it down into its little component pieces, just like it would be in reality. I'm going to start with the pen tool, because remember that's the one I emphasized as being one of the most important ones to learn about. So with the pen tool, I'm just going to create a simple little shape here. And I said you can click and hold and drag out, and you can get curved line segments. So here again I'm clicking and holding. And I'm going to go back to the end here. I can use the white arrow tool as the direct selection tool, so I can use that if I wanted to manipulate this little bit of a curve or manipulate a node, individual piece. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating one little, it's not even called a quill, I'm not too sure exactly what you'd call this little piece of the feather, the sort of downy part of the feather. Does anyone know what it's called? Okay, good, you don't know either. It's the part that almost kind of looks like a hair that's coming off. The quill is the part in the middle. Anyway, this is almost done. So again, I'm just working with those few simple points that I put down to create an object that looks like this. Now it's kind of lying on its side. I think I need to rotate it around. So with the regular selection tool, I can sit near the corner but not right on it, and I can use it tool to drag it and position it. It looks a little bit big at the moment, but I'm going to fill it in with some color here first before I shrink it down. I don't need an outline or a stroke on it, so I'm going to turn the stroke off. But I would like it to have a pattern on the inside, and I think a gradient will work well here. So I'm going to open up the gradient palette. And probably a linear gradient in this case I think will work. I don't really like that color selection that I've got there though, so I'm going to, oops, I just hit my gradient again. I'm going to pull that off for the moment. I'm going to change the color of the gradient fill here by just dragging some of the color chips onto the gradient window here. I'll move it up over. So let's say we're going to make an orangey red sort of feather. So it's going to be orange here to more of a red here. I'll do a full CMYK red. So we'll get a really fiery looking kind of feather. And I can adjust this slider here. Will change how quickly the gradation occurs from one color to the next. So maybe I'll leave it at that. Okay, so that's going to be one part of my feather. The other part I need is the quill, which is the long part up the middle. That's going to be a very similar shape again. So again, I like to use the pen tool. Click once to make an anchor point. Click again, drag, drag. Here we are, click and drag, click and drag. Actually, I don't know if I need that one. I'm going to undo and just go back up to there. Now it's filled in with orange. I really don't need that. So I need to very quickly here come in and turn off the fill. And in fact, I think for fill, maybe just a light gray would work here. Now that's not quite the right shape either. It's not too bad on the bottom, but it's kind of too fat and too thick. So again, I need to pick up the direct selection tool, the white arrow tool. This point right here, you'll notice right now, is almost in a bit of a hard point. I need to convert it to curves. This is an important little option box up here that will convert a hard point into a gentle curve. I can adjust these handles at the different anchor points to control the amount of curve. Getting there. Sometimes you may want to add an anchor point. Here I'm having trouble controlling the width, so it might be best if I click back on the pen tool, and if I try and click on the path, it will actually add another anchor point there, and then I can grab the direct selection tool and manipulate that one little point that I just added. Arrow keys you can use on the keyboard too to shrink. Okay, maybe I'll try that. It's a little hard for you to see on the LCD, so I'm going to make this just a little bit darker. Yeah, that shows up better. Okay, so now really there's only these couple of component pieces for the feather. It's just a matter of putting it together now. So let's say that this is going to be one of the little wisps in at the bottom of the feather. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. I think it's kind of big. And remember I mentioned the other day about overlapping objects as well. If I look at this object right now, the quill part is heading over the feather. I may actually want to, I'm going to right click on the object and send it to the back so that these parts of the feather sit up more on top. Arrow keys to nudge it over. Okay, I'll zoom back out. So what do you suppose happens at this point? Should I make another one of these little feathery options? Copy and paste it, right? Why not? Save some time. So I'll click on the object and come up to Edit and Copy. It's Command C for copying, Command V for paste. I'll paste it in, and there, now I have two of them. And I'm going to make this one, I'll shrink it slightly and curve it slightly.
Well, you can put it the other side too, right? If you want to.
Yeah, yeah, and here I'm using the arrow keys to kind of nudge it into position a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to select both of these ones and copy and paste them. So we can make this work for ourselves more exponentially here. I may not drag them both in at the same time, just so that I can pick them up and move them around. So I may need to zoom in here. That was Command plus I used on the keyboard to zoom in. See, now that one kind of overlapped the wrong way there. But that could be okay too. It might provide a little bit of variety, but I think I'll try and make it come in between. And then this one, same, I think it needs a slight rotation. Okay. Then I can take those four, copy and paste up. And so what kind of looked like it might have been a really onerous task at the beginning and probably a huge amount of time, we can start to do fairly quickly. And again, some of these ones I may need to reposition slightly here. Copy and paste again. And I may want to start to grab some of these and physically tease them apart because they seem to be getting a little bit dense in there. But this is going to end up giving me a much more detailed looking image than I would have ever got by trying to just draw the entire outline all in one shot. Okay. I'll zoom out and let's just try one more other block here. What I might do here, just to give you a sense of how it's going to work, is transform these ones and flip them over to the other side. So there are a few different options, and there's a transform palette here that will give us the options that we want. Probably the easiest one, if we right click out here, we can flip an object horizontally. Right, so that gets it moving over into that position. Now I'm still going to have to come in and manually pick up some of these and move them back into position. What's that? Yeah, you can select a couple at a time, so I can click and drag and select a few, but then they're still going to need to be tweaked individually, and again, just the arrow keys on the keyboard kind of make pretty quick work of that. Okay, and here I might be able to kind of rotate it slightly. Okay, so you can see if I worked on that for another even probably 5-10 minutes, I'd probably have enough of those copied and pasted, moved and shifted, and I would have a very, almost photorealistic looking feather. So that could be one complete object. Okay. When it's complete, the best thing to do is to group the object so that it's easy to pick up later on when we're going to copy and paste together to make your master sheet of symbols. Grouping is really simple. You can just drag a box to select the pixels. If you're selecting or objects, if you're selecting objects, you can either hold the Shift key down. If I wanted to select a few very specific points here, I can use the Shift key and select multiple objects, or I can click and drag, select them all, and then up under the Object menu I can group it together. Now the next time I come to pick it up, it comes as one complete object. Until I ungroup it, I can just right click on here and ungroup it. Okay, give that a try and see if you can create, even if it's just